What is going on, everyone? It's your guy, Cole Jackson, back with another episode, the last episode of the 2021 What the Flock Postgame Show. We're going to be giving you an instant analysis and breakdown of another loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Devastating loss, tough loss. Actually looks like they could have made a shot at it. The Dolphins aren't helping them out right now, but at the time of this recording anyway. But, still the Ravens had to take care of business to have an opportunity to make that last final push or playoff push. They didn't. Before we get into it, I'd like to thank the sponsors of the What the Flock Postgame Show. It's our guys and gals over at Lee's Pint and Shell, located right in the heart of Baltimore. Lee's is your go-to for game day with their game day specials. They got 32-ounce Bud Light drafts, $15 Michelob Ultra buckets, $12 Modelo and Corona Pony buckets, and $20 White Claw buckets. It's your go-to for the Ravens game day. I'll drop all their stuff down below. Check it out. And over to my post-game co-host, it's Adam Bonacorsi. What the flock is going on, my guy?
If you would have asked me this, whatever time it is, several hours ago, I'd probably be a lot more dark and gloomy. I think I did have on a black hoodie before, draped over the head, sunglasses. I just was not feeling it. I told you, standing outside in the rain, just playing some emo music, whatever it takes, right? Like, that's my mood. I'm now into draft season. I'm ready to go. We can wrap this puppy up of a season, kind of go through it, and we will. And look, Murphy's Law took one last victim here, and that's just been this whole season. What can go wrong will go wrong, culminating in a final, first week 18, final Roethlisberger game loss, final for us loss, and a Tyus Bowser potential Achilles. What a day.
Yeah, no, it's just like you said, everything that's gone or could have gone wrong seemed to have gone wrong at every step of the way. Except for the start of the season. It's hard to think back to September, that Chiefs game, one of the best games in the NFL all year. Obviously we were riding so high, and then the Lions game, and it just feels like that was ancient ages ago.
It feels like last season at this point in time.
It does feel like last season. And, it's no joke. Like, December and January dragged on, and it felt like we were just kind of limping across the finish line. But, we're going to talk a little bit, obviously, about the game. This is the post-game show. But I think a lot of commentary is going to kind of extend beyond just the game itself. And, there's no better place to start than Tyler Huntley. It's been a huge conversation, and it has turned mostly media driven. I wouldn't say that necessarily Ravens fan driven, mostly media driven by, saying, why would we pay Lamar Jackson when you can, trade him for a couple first round picks, roll with Tyler Huntley, maybe draft someone with one of those first round picks you get. And, you have the other advantage of $30 million. And, I think you could still probably have the debate about trading him and drafting another quarterback, but that has its own sort of caveats to it. But the reality is Tyler Huntley is not, at this point in time anyway, a starting caliber NFL quarterback. What Tyler Huntley is, and hold on before everyone starts freaking out in the comments, what Tyler Huntley is a very good backup quarterback. And that just speaks to the lack of depth across the NFL in terms of there's not even 32 quality starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So not every team has one, let alone having enough to have a backup. So the question is, what do you need in a backup quarterback? You need a guy that's going to be able to step in smaller samples and play well for you. And I think Tyler Huntley did that. I genuinely think he had a couple of games where he played quite well, and I think he can continue to do that. But when you become a starting quarterback and it's, now 17 games of you're the guy, it gets really tough. And I think that's what we saw. As teams got tape on Tyler Huntley, they learned to take away things from Tyler Huntley. And there's some other things in this game. Obviously, he's been dealing with a crap O-line, and, he actually put them in a darn good position to win today. If Marquise Brown holds on to that ball, that was a pretty ball. But
beautifully thrown ball.
Yeah, but as a general, we had a fumble from Huntley. We had 2 picks from Huntley, one of which was just hideous. And 3 games in a row now, they have not been able to score in the red zone. It actually really makes you appreciate Lamar Jackson, even when Lamar was playing bad, which no one disagrees that in the middle part of the season he was playing bad. he was still able to produce points. Even if you go back over 2019 and 2020, when he had down games, they were still scoring like 20 points. We've scored what, one offensive touchdown in 2 games? Like
Two
it's
plus,
just not
yes, since Q4 versus Cincy.
it's just like it's not the same. And this isn't a knock on Tyler Huntley. Tyler Huntley is going to continue to develop. He's still a young kid. I don't want this to come across as trashing because it's not. It's just you need to know what you have. And I think the Ravens have a very good starting quarterback in Lamar Jackson and a very good NFL backup in Tyler Huntley. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need that. If Lamar has to go out of a game, if he has to take a dump in the middle of the third quarter, you need Huntley to be able to step in. That's just the reality. My biggest takeaway on the situation, this was a long rant, sorry, but it's just sometimes it's good to have 2 guys in the right position to succeed. And I think that's what they have. There's no need to go trade someone and, try and put someone in a different spot when you don't need to. That's my take on it.
No, and I mean, far be it for me to disagree with anything you said. I think that if you had a more statuesque pocket passer style quarterback behind this offensive line in this system with Roman, it doesn't even end up nearly as close as what Huntley was able to provide, period. And that's great, right? That's what you want. You want some guys are, in some systems they have the Taysom Hill type, right? You can go in there and change things up and then, they're confusing the defense. Or you get the guy who's continuous. You have one system. Everybody's playing by the same system, and nothing really changes. I think Huntley is a perfect QB2 in this offense. And could he start somewhere else? Sure. And I hate to make the Tyrod Taylor comparison, but Tyrod Taylor was a damn fine backup. He was able to go out and be a starter for a while out there, and then he just became this, again, QB2 extraordinaire around the league who was popping in for starts here and there to kind of help bridge the gap to a young QB. So, and I'm not saying that's what Huntley will be, but it kind of reminds you of that in the thought of you had Flacco and Taylor was a great QB2 that they had there behind him in that time. And Huntley will do a good job here. The Ravens have him for one more year, if I'm correct. So I think that, you just kind of ride it out, right? Let things go the way they're going. And that's it, right? You got a good backup. It's done. I would like one more note on this, Cole, and we can move on to the next player conversation here. In the preseason, Huntley was chastised and said, no, he shouldn't make the team. He's behind Trace McSorley. They don't need 3Q, whatever it may be. To see the conversation, and that wasn't small pockets. That was a very large conversation. To see it turn from that to what it's become now is just wild, right? Yeah. Over the course of 4 or 5 starts, whatever it may be, 4 or 5 games. It is just wild to see how much the conversation changed. But yeah, I think these last couple games, inability to get into the end zone, and we can talk about Roman and where that plays in the offense. But I think that, the pick today was a bad read. The end zone pick, should I say. The other one was just an airmail. But I think he's still got a lot of growing up to do. So have the conversation in 2 to 3 years, whatever. If he's starting somewhere else and you say, told you, sure. But right now, he's not a QB1. He's perfectly damn fine backup for the Ravens.
Well said. Bang on. And I don't want to waste a ton of time talking about the running backs. I mean, we know what it's going to be next year. They're probably going to either draft one late, pick up a UDFA or a couple of UDFAs. But it's going to be the Dobbins and Gus show. We have, pending their health, but both had injuries that aren't necessarily, we're not talking about dislocated ankles and, exploded knees. And so I think they'll be back, so I don't want to waste a ton of time. It was actually nice to see Tyson Williams get a carry, and he did quite well with it. So, I mean, Tyson Williams is going to probably come into camp. He's going to compete. I think they'll most likely draft a guy with like a 6th. That's kind of what I'm expecting.
Makes sense.
I could maybe see if they keep most of those 4s, maybe they go with a 4th round pick on a running back. But it'll really depend on if they trade back and gain more picks, if they move up and lose some of those picks. I could kind of see the argument because you're bringing 2 guys off of a major injury. So getting someone that's a little higher skilled in a 4th round pick, I could kind of see that making sense. So that wouldn't necessarily be earth-shattering to me. But, I don't see running back being high. It's going to be the Dobbins and Gus show pending health. So, we'll move on from that. But, the receiver I want to talk about is Marquise Brown because, we've been through the ebbs and the flows. I mean, it's no secret that he hasn't fit as well with Tyler Huntley as he did with Lamar Jackson. I mean, that's not earth-shattering news. That's not, riveting analysis. It reminds me a lot of when John Brown kind of disappeared when Lamar Jackson took over from Joe Flacco. It's just they didn't have chemistry. Lamar's deep ball wasn't going for him at that time, which was, why Flacco had such a connection with John Brown. So, it's not – I think that needs to be factored in for the end of the season because, he was having a very good season. He was well on pace for 1,000. I think he came up with like 984 yards receiving this year. So, I mean, he was right on the cusp of 1,000, but, still a disappointing output. 3 catches on 7 targets, 27 yards. It's just been disappointing. They haven't been able to get him involved. Huntley hasn't been able to kind of sling that deep ball to the edge of the field. It's been mostly, hitting Mark Andrews on crossing routes or on seams, and that's kind of where they've gotten the bulk of their deep passing. But, I think it's a no-brainer. They're going to pick up Hollywood's 5th-year option, but, the question becomes, do you extend him? And I think with all the other extensions going on, and, Bateman, I think, is going to be one of those guys, and Tylan Wallace got a little bit more involved as the season went on, and you still have Prochet and Duvernay, and I don't know if they're going to go with an extension. Like, what's your kind of take on that?
Okay. So I'm either going to get panned or cheered for this, depending on how people feel about Hollywood. Do you feel like the Ravens wide receiver curse is done? Like it's out, like done? Is that over?
I would say, I mean, we're getting more out of pretty much everybody that's been drafted except Boykin in the last 3 years. So 2019, 2020, 2021 drafts produced 6 wide receivers. Boykin's the only one that I think has been truly disappointing. I think Prochet has been awesome in limited views. Duvernay's carved out a great special teams role, and he's kind of a Swiss Army knife. He's kind of that wide receiver 3-4 that you want on your team. He can be a big playmaker. Bateman looks better than any rookie I can really remember, except maybe Hollywood. That was Hollywood playing with a screw in his foot. But Bateman looks like legit. And I mean, Hollywood, I think there's a few things with Hollywood in a vacuum. Like Hollywood as a player, I think he's a good player. He gets open. He struggles to catch, but he kind of gives you the big plays that kind of let you live with it. At least he was with Lamar Jackson. His stats would be outrageous if he caught even just those drops he had in the Detroit game alone. I mean, he left 120 yards, I think I calculated, on the field and 2 touchdowns. So add that to his numbers. He's a 1,100-yard receiver. We're not even really thinking about it. But, still plays not made or still plays not made. So, I mean, do I think they broke it? Yeah, I think even Tylan Wallace has looked better in very limited opportunities than guys like, I don't know, Yaman Figures and David Reed and Tandon Doss and the graveyard guys.
Oh, my God.
Well, even Jordan Lasley and who was the
Jaleel
big cat
Scott
that they had there? Jaleel Scott. And those guys that we have now are producing better results, in my opinion, than they did in the past. So, yes, I would say they have proven that they are capable to draft and I think even kind of develop. Like, I think you're getting more out of their development. I don't think you can look at a guy like Prochet or Duvernay. Duvernay, like, if you want a very specific trait where I think he's developed, just look at how much more fluid he is in his cuts. Like, he used to look like a Mack truck trying to turn, and now he's a lot more fluid. I don't think you can look at that and say the coaches haven't really helped. I think Marquise Brown, again, as in a vacuum, great player. I think when you go back and you look at that draft class and you see he was the first receiver taken, and A.J. Brown has had his success, DK Metcalf's had it, I think that's where people, give him a harsher assessment. But in a vacuum, Hollywood's a good player. Is he a franchise number 1 wide receiver?
No.
That's what we need to determine. And I kind of lean towards no.
No.
I don't think he's been able to be consistent enough to make that conclusion.
So, all right. So all of that, and then here's my logic, right? Give him that 5th-year tag, make him a modest offer that kind of falls in line with the wide receiver too. If he doesn't bite, which I don't expect him to, but you've made the offer, I feel confident in DaCosta in the front office to go out and draft another wide receiver at that point in time that they can insert into this offense, grow, develop, and then rinse and repeat at that point in time. And again, not a knock on Hollywood. I think it's, at least to me, pretty evident that Bateman will be focused moving forward as the wide receiver one, if you will. Behind Andrews is still always going to be that target share, that monster eating up like a Pitta before him, like a Todd Heap before him, right? Like, you're a huge integral part of this offense here in Baltimore. But I think that you make Hollywood an offer, right? I'm not necessarily letting him skate. And if he bites on a lower offer to stay in Baltimore, awesome. And if he doesn't, all right, we move on. Go out, get your payday. We'll take the compensatory pick, and we'll go draft a guy because the franchise is capable of doing so. And then you acclimate him the same way you do with a Prochet, Duvernay, anybody else, where they work them in. Maybe you add a bridge veteran in there, whatever you need to do. I think it's completely feasible. So, yeah, I think we'll get another year out of Holly, and then we'll see what's up.
And I tend to agree. I think that makes the most sense. I tweeted about it last week. Like, I think the 5th-year option is a guarantee. He's going to get the 5th-year option. I think he should get the 5th-year option. It seems like a no-brainer. But in terms of the extension, completely different conversation. Mark Andrews just had a season with 152 targets. Like, he's pretty much your number one guy. And yeah, they didn't pass a lot down the stretch because they were always playing from behind and whatnot. But still, like, that's like probably your number one go-to, and you need to compliment him. And the thing is, I think Hollywood does compliment well. You need a guy with speed, but the only thing is you can get some speed guys cheap. And so that's where it's going to kind of come down to what else can he give you. If he makes that catch today, it's funny how much little plays can make a difference, in my opinion. If he makes that catch and we're in field goal range because he makes a huge catch on a game-winning drive, it's just so much different. But he hasn't been able to kind of make some of those clutch plays when we've needed them. He had the drops early. So there's enough concerns where you kind of start to get worried about the extension. But a guy that you have no concerns with, and I'll let you kind of talk about him, is Mark Andrews. Like, good-looking cat. Let's start there. Good-looking cat. Good-looking cat. But, what do you think of Andrews? Because, I mean, this guy's development is absolutely absurd.
No, and so you can't even say, like, oh, next year teams are going to start to pay attention to him. They were doing it this year, and he's still all the way up there. If you don't think he's a top 3 tight end in this league, and I get there was a Waller debate before, there's not now. It's gone, right? That's out the window. Andrews is a top 3 tight end in the NFL. And I'm not going to say it. I was going to knock on wood. I'm not going to say it. There is a curse that I tweeted about, and I'm going to leave it at that. And I hope he does not fall victim to the curse. And I'm still going to knock on wood anyway, but I'm not going to bring it up. Feel free to go look that up, because after the Bowser incident today, it's pretty alarming to see the trend. So, what more do you want, right? Like, could the Ravens go out and probably go grab another tight end out there? Sure. He's going to be a tight end 3. He's not out there to steal targets. You don't need a big pass catching guy. That's Andrew. Andrews had a carry today. I mean, that was wild to see, right?
Yeah, that was wild. I don't really want to see that again.
No, but like, they opened the vault. Yeah, the vault's open. That's it. That was the entire vault.
The vault was just a ham and cheese sandwich and a Mark Andrews carry.
There you go. I don't know if you caught it on the broadcast. Maybe it wasn't on the broadcast. I can't remember where I saw it. I think it was Mark Viviano had tweeted, Mark Andrews has 6 tackles on this season. It's the same amount that Jalen Ferguson does.
God, that's brutal.
Here's a stat for you.
That is a stat.
Yeah,
that actually, right? You kind of brought up an interesting point, and that's kind of like, I think a sneaky need is that or tight end 3 spot, because
Oliver's not doing it.
No, Josh Oliver's not it. And so this is going to kind of bleed. It's a nice little way of preface how I want to talk about Greg Roman. So I get accused of being Greg Roman's illegitimate son. Because I sometimes defend his play calls. I just watch the games and make my decisions based on what I see. I don't know what to tell you guys. My criticism of Greg Roman, there's always going to be play calls I disagree with. I thought throwing it in the red zone after you just ran all over them on the Huntley pick. I think it was the second pick. Obviously it's not a good play call. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, this and that. Like, it's not a good play call. It is what it is. But do you fire a guy over some of those bad play calls here and there? I really don't know, because most of the time I don't always agree with everyone, and I've done film breakdowns on them. You can go watch them where I explain why I think it was a good play call. But the thing is, like, I think the Ravens draft strategy, and we just talked about it, with 6 wide receivers drafted in the last 3 years. And very few offensive linemen drafted. They haven't really built a Greg Roman run offense in the last 3 years of drafts. And what I mean by that is they've drafted wide receivers. They've focused on not really building up the O-line. I know OBJ obviously throws a huge wrench in that. It's something that, it's just one of those crap luck things. Like, he just randomly woke up one day and decided he didn't want to play right tackle. There's not much you can really do about that. It was get value for him or let him go for nothing in a couple of years. Like, that's just a crap situation that the GM has to deal with. But they didn't really, refill the void very well, and that's kind of the criticism. So they haven't been drafting O-lines or at O-line. They haven't been building this bully that they keep saying they want, and that makes them struggle to run a power offense. And so that's my issue is, are we going to keep asking Greg Roman to go out there and run an offense while we're like, he's playing so much heavy set, and there's a good argument to play heavy because they throw well at heavy. But at what point do you think, okay, maybe this will be with our personnel? Our personnel is a better fit for, a spread zone-based offense. And you can make that argument. Dobbins is a great zone runner. You can look at the amount of wide receivers we have that we can't seem to get on the field because we only play 2 wide receiver sets. There's all these things that don't align with Greg Roman's offense and the way DaCosta has built this team. That is my rationale for why I think they should consider moving on from Roman. It's not just all the play calls. I know you guys are going to disagree with me. I think I've made it clear on Twitter. I don't really care. I have my opinion. It is what it is. You guys are entitled to your opinion. I think he does some things well. I think he does other things poorly. When you say things like he's holding Lamar back and he won't open up the offense, I don't really see how you can say that when we all bragged after the first 4 weeks that Lamar was leading the league in ADOT, and they were pushing the ball downfield, and Lamar was 5th in passing yards, and that was, to me, opening up the offense. They were finally pushing the ball further downfield. They had to stop because their O-line can't block anything. So it's that disconnect between, is Roman going to lead a prolific passing offense? Probably not. Do they need a prolific passing offense? I don't know. I don't really know if they do need that. I think they need to be able to push the ball downfield when they need to push the ball downfield, and they need to be able to run the ball when they need to run the ball. They weren't able to do that this year because of the offensive line. First and foremost, I don't think it's just because of the offensive coordinator. That said, I think they really need to have a serious conversation about what is our philosophy moving forward. If it's going to be we're sticking with Roman and we're rolled, then they need to go out there and get another tight end that can block and smash heads. They need to build up the O-line. They need to do all of this. If they're going to roll with what they have and say we're going to get lighter, we're going to play a faster speed base, then it's time to move on from Greg
Roman. I'm only laughing over here because it's a lot of what I've said. I don't think Roman's back. I don't. I don't see the reason that bringing him back makes a ton of sense unless they plan on kind of, like you said, going against the grain of what the draft strategy has seemed to be recently, or the offseason plans have seemed to be. I don't think they're going to, though. I think they're ready for a fresh start. But a lot of, a quick little tweet, like, if Greg Roman's still the offensive coordinator come March, that's all I said. Every single reply, tomorrow. And it's like, okay, hold up. That's not how this team operates. They're going to sit back. They're going to have a discussion about how much was based on injury, COVID losses, whatever else it may be. They're going to look at the personnel they have moving forward, what they need to add, how that intertwines with what Roman's strengths are. Is it going to be a co-coordinator thing maybe next year, where similar to Marty and Greg back in the day? Like, is it going to be something like that? I don't know. I think they're going to look at the whole thing, though, before they make any decisions. And that's why I said March, because this team is not a team that will make a knee-jerk reaction and just fire somebody today. Here's your pink slip, get the hell out. All right, now what are we going to do? Like, that's not how they operate. So I do think Roman's gone. I genuinely do. I don't think Wink is, because there's a lot of people calling for his head too, because God forbid, holding the 13 points today up until overtime, and hell, without a touchdown.
I don't even want to talk about Wink. It drives me crazy. I'm not going to talk about him. I'll let you talk to him when we get there. But I actually agree with you. I think it's kind of like there's two different opinions. There's what I would do or what I think they should do, and what I think they'll do. I could see them moving on from him. I would move on from him. My rationale just seems to be a lot different than most people's. And that's the only thing that I would say.
Yep.
So it's not that I think he should necessarily be kept. I would move on from him, and I would change the philosophy of my team to be a lighter, more athletic offense with a zone running scheme. That would be one of my primary staples. And then I would build my offensive line around that, because I think you could consider maybe Bozeman walking, even though I've been supportive of bringing him back, but he's a gap center. You can go get Tyler Linderbaum. He's a zone center. Iowa runs a hell of a zone scheme. So that's what I'm saying. It's not necessarily, I don't really keep Roman, don't keep Roman. I don't really care at the end of the day. They can make their own decision. I think they need to start aligning their draft strategy, their team building strategy with the offense that's being run. That's my opinion on the situation. And with that, let's transition into the defense. I mean, what I kind of want to focus on with the defense, because I mean, I'm not going to go through the secondary and talk about, guys that are going to be working at Arby's next week. And not really any offense to those guys. Like, someone sent me a message, and I do want to acknowledge this publicly, because it was a fair point. These guys are going out there and working hard, and this is their, they're trying to live their dream playing in the NFL.
Absolutely.
And so when I got that message, I really thought about it, even though I just made a joke about it. I thought about it, and I was like, you know what, you're right. And, kudos to those guys, like stepping up in tough circumstances where a guy like Kevin Seymour, and they just haven't been playing a lot
Geno
of football
Stone
this
interception.
Year. Yeah.
Like
it's just
guys you wouldn't expect. Yeah.
It's just been a whole lot of it's important to remember, but I do want to focus on, like, let's start with the D line. What do we think happens with, let's group a couple guys. So what do you think happens with the Monsters, Williams, Campbell, and Wolf?
So I'll probably have angry people for this one. I think Williams will be back at a reduced salary. Maybe they tap a year on it at Vetmin to lower it down something. I think he stays. Only reason is because I think Wolf is gone, and I think Campbell is going to retire, and they're going to hope for some type of continuity on that line, even if it means Williams at a reduced role further. I don't think they're going to go complete clean slate there. You have too many other needs across the board that you can't allocate all of your draft capital and your free agency or your cap money to that. So they're going to want something, and they're going to want to make it work. And Williams won't demand a lot out there if he's cut loose and sent packing. But I think Campbell retires, and I think Wolf's back injury, the fact that they were hoping he would come back and he decided not to come back, I think that speaks volumes to me. And that's it, right? So I think you're looking at Madubuike and Washington and who else? I think they're going to want a little something there for continuity. So, are we going to bring Jelly back again on a 1-year vet? So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. But that's just me. Where's your head on those three?
I actually think Campbell comes back for a year. And so I think that Campbell coming back or retiring, I completely agree with you. I think that the continuity is important. I think they'll focus on that. But Campbell made that comment about how Calais Campbell was a really, really, really good football player. Now, he wasn't a Hall of Famer, and he wasn't like a Raven like the way a guy like Ray Lewis was, where he was announcing his retirement, or a guy like Roethlisberger was. But I found when I read the quote when he was asked specifically about retiring, I was left thinking like, oh, it sounds like he might actually come back. Whereas if you had asked me the week before he made that comment, I would have been like, no, there's no way he's coming back. So when he said that, I was like, I wonder if they go out and they draft, a couple of cats for the trenches, And in that case, I think Wolf and Williams are gone, both of them. I wonder if he'll be like, okay, I can come back and play a reduced role, similar to like a Justin Houston, where he's going to add on another year. And maybe he does something like, I don't know, a 2-year, $8 million contract with like a. So I mean, not the cap guy over here, but I actually think there's a chance he comes back.
Okay.
So
a better swan song wouldn't be a bad way.
Yeah, well, and I think our rationale is the same. I think they're going to opt for some sort of continuity. I hope that they push for Campbell and not Williams. That's kind of where I'm standing on that. When I look at the linebackers, I mean, I think LJ Fort's going to get healthy and come back.
Yep.
I don't think you'll see, if that happens, I don't think you'll see Josh Bynes stick around. I think Chris Board will probably stick around, but it'll be Bynes or Fort, depending on health. But kudos to Bynes, hell of a season from him. So that gives it. I forgot to talk outside linebackers. What do you think happens with Justin Houston? Because what a season from him on a very, very cheap contract.
Yeah, and we talk about kind of picking it up on the fly a little bit and how long it takes you to get acclimated and everything into a new system. And look, Houston's fine. He's a savvy veteran, right? It's not a big deal for him. I would love to see him come back for another year. There's another guy where, like you said, he won't take $2 and $8 million, but something reasonable, something not too far out of line of what they just gave him for a year. I would, especially with Bowser's Achilles, if that is truly the issue, he's not going to be back week 1. There's no way on an Achilles he's back week 1. Stranger things have happened, sure, but I don't see that. ACL, I'd probably say, sure, I'll see you week 1. Achilles, if I can see by the, get you off the pup and into the year by like week 8, I'm happy. Yeah. So, again, continuity matters.
That's a huge hole because it's not just that it's another edge player. It's an edge player with a very, very diverse skill set. And Dalen Hayes does do some of the things he does. Malik Harrison can play a little bit outside linebacker in the Sam role. But, that really makes you think about, maybe they're looking for an off-ball linebacker to do some of those roles that he does in the draft this year that you probably weren't really thinking about beforehand. So that's something that we really need to think about. But I agree. I think they'd lean towards getting Houston back. I guess it's like they went from they seem to always have vets on the D-line, right? So it's kind of like it was McPhee for a couple years. So maybe Houston becomes McPhee, where they want to keep him around on a cheap deal. I don't know if Justin Houston, because McPhee never had pass rusher numbers per capita the way Houston did later in his career with the Ravens. So I don't know. Maybe this gets Houston paid again. One last deal for a contender that has cap space, and they want to.
I'd be fine with that.
Yeah. I, as long as they can make it work. But if they're trying to keep him and Campbell, then it kind of becomes a little expensive. So it's really going to come down to what he'll take.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think we both agree there. I'd like to see. I agree with why you said Williams, because I think you see Campbell retiring. I think if they could find a way for the two veterans to be in that front seven, to be like LJ Fort returns, provides that stability at inside linebacker, and then they can keep Campbell and Justin Houston. I think that's a very good situation to be going into the draft with. Doesn't mean you can't add an edge. Doesn't mean you can't, add a defensive tackle, pass rusher, interior pass rusher, whatever. But then when I look into the secondary, Jimmy Smith he looked like crap today. That was rough. My ankles hurt a little bit seeing him get juked out on that whip route. But Jimmy Smith's going to be a big decision. I think they need to make a decision about even a depth guy like Tony Jefferson. Jefferson has been playing special teams for them, so his likelihood of being brought back actually goes up because of that. Because he's not going to be a starter. They're going to either bring back Elliott maybe on a cheap 1-year prove-it deal to be either free safety, or they're going to draft one. But I can see Tony Jefferson replacing the Anthony Levine role. Maybe we don't see Levine back, but then it becomes, can Jefferson do all the things that Levine did on special teams? Because Levine was a key guy on all units, but he also was the key guy on the punt team where he would take the snaps if it was a fake. So there's a lot of considerations there. So they have a lot of decisions to make with those guys, but I would personally love to see TJ brought back. Actually, I think he brings a lot of attitude. I think it'd be really good for their leadership group to have him back. But I don't see Jimmy Smith being brought back. And I think Adam is suffering from technical difficulties. He started to lag, and now he is possibly joining us from another. There he is. Okay, Adam's back. So back to what I was saying. I was saying I think they'll find a way to bring back TJ, but
Right.
I think we'll see Jimmy Smith not back with the Ravens. So what do you have from that secondary unit?
So Averett gone. Free agency is getting picked up somewhere else. Probably nets a 5th round pick, maybe a 4th. I don't think he's going to get a chunky payday. I think Westry might be back as a camp body, but that's probably the extent of it. I'm so sorry for that terrible take in the beginning of the year. He looks great in camp. I'm an idiot, right? I'll own my idiocy. I think I'd bring back Tony Jefferson to camp again, right? Give him a shot to make this team again. And I don't know. Geno Stone will be back. I think we'll see a lot of the same faces, at least through camp. The only other guy, I don't think Joker will be back. And I'm fine with that. So I do think the potential to add another safety, even though you have Brandon Stevens back there too, and Chuck Clark makes a lot of sense. And I missed this. Did you mention Tavon Young?
No, but good call.
So he got a chunky cap hit. It can be reduced if he gets an extension or whatever. Restructure. I think only an extension, but there's a lot of people calling to cut him. And I'm like, he just had his healthiest season on record, right?
Played well.
He looks great. He played solid. It could be expected after missing 2 years of football. Keep his ass around. Like, I'll tack on an extra year if it helps lower your cap hit, whatever. The last thing you need to do is to go into next season and say, well, we have our 2 starting outside corners coming off major injuries, and then we cut our slot guy who was starting for us, and then we have absolutely no depth behind that whatsoever. Like, Tavon is a must for me to stay around, and he's a guy that I would have a candidate to extend right away to try to clear some cap space. I think he can clear $3 million, $4 million, whatever it may be out there to do that. So,
well, like I said, that could be maybe they get $4 million off of an extension, and that goes into the Campbell fund, right? Like that's where they can kind of find some of that money inside. So I think you're right. Like I think they got to keep him. I think it opens too big of a hole. Because that's the thing, right? We always say that. It's like, well, cut this guy, cut that guy, cut this guy, and it's like, okay, every time we do that, now our draft needs like now we need a free safety and a slot corner, but we also need an offensive tackle and a defensive tackle, and like, every time we cut someone, we create another need for the most part. And it's the same thing we were talking about with the D-line. They're going to want some continuity. They're going to want some stabilization in the secondary after the year we just had. I think Marlon comes back pretty risk-free. Anytime you're dealing with a knee injury with Peters, it's always going to be a bit of a risk, but his was a pretty straight. Well, I mean, from what we know, obviously I don't know the ins and outs, but it wasn't like ACL, MCL, PCL like the way Boyle's was. I think Peters should be expected back for the preseason, so that'll be good. But again, how is he going to play on a reconstructed knee? So we'll see. But I think you'll see Jimmy gone. Tavon Young will stay around, and they're going to have to draft someone. They're going to have to build up. A lot of those 4th round picks are going to go into these depth spots. That's why I'm not. I would say definitely trade up if you can get a cat that you really have your eye on. I'm always going to be supportive of that. I'm probably going to be on team don't trade back because I think someone's going to fall to 14. There's always someone in the middle of the first that falls, and they'll be there to snatch them up as a best player available pick. But, that 2nd round pick, it's going to be at like, what, 44, 43, something like that?
46?
46 probably. I can't do math. So, I mean, maybe you're able to trade up 10 spots and you're getting a guy in the 2nd round that should have been a 1st round pick, right? So that's where you're giving up some of those 4th round picks, maybe one of your 3rds because you have that 3rd round comp pick for Cully being hired by the Texans. So, but I think we have that huge tranche of mid-round picks, like literally 5 4th round picks, 2 3rd round picks. One of those 4s could possibly become a 3rd, probably won't for the Judon thing. But I mean, that's on one hand, it's like, well, we have a lot of ammo to move up. do it if you have to. But on the other hand, you're going to be stocking the cupboard with a lot of young talent. The defensive line needs to be replenished. Your cornerback group needs to be replenished, like you just mentioned, with guys who are going to get paid, be gone. They might add another running back. They need a tight end that can do a little versatile things. Maybe they look at another linebacker to bring in here and compete with, because Queen had a bad game today, a couple bad games to end the season. So if we didn't talk about him, I don't even want to talk about him right now. So all that to say is, I think I tweeted it today. I think the Ravens have a lot of decisions to make, not just about coaches and whatnot. I think they're at a pivotal point in the Lamar Jackson era of this franchise where they need to decide what the plan is moving forward. So it's going to be interesting to see. And two guys watching football will be here to cover it for you. So before we end today, Adam, I guess we won't do the player of the game, but what I'd like to know is, what is your Lee's Pint and Shell Baltimore Ravens player of the year? Who's your guy?
So, Cole, I'm going to be honest with you. There was 11 or 12. I think it was 12 total Ravens who played all 18 games this year. That's it. So Pickens be slim on this one. Right? So it's kind of wild to think about. And I think that number was including Tucker, Sam Cook, and God, I almost said Morgan Cox. I'm so sorry. Long snapper, help me out.
Nick Moore.
Thank you, Nick Moore. I apologize because we know Nick Moore is clearly watching this. How do you not pick Mark Andrews?
Yeah, like I said, good-looking cat. But
that's the only reason I picked him. Is there other reasons?
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, that's where I'm actually leaning Justin Tucker.
Okay.
I think
that was another.
He was the most
right?
consistent Raven all year.
All right, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. And it's not like you have a great crop to pick from here. Who would you, and we'll throw Lee's Pint and Shell in front of it. Who is your Lee's Pint and Shell Rookie of the Year? Yeah, see, it's a little tougher, isn't it? Part of you's like Bateman because he played so well when he was utilized properly, but he also didn't play a full season. And Odafe had some critical plays, right, against Kansas City, the strip sack to finally get the monkey off their back. Although one might say that set off the Kansas City curse, because we know what happened kind of after that game.
Yeah.
Far be it from me. Somebody sold their soul in that front office, maybe. I don't know. But who you feel? Who would be your Rookie of the Year?
I think I'd go with
neither of them for me.
Because, well, see, I want to say I'm giving some heavy consideration to Brandon Stevens, but that's because, but my reasoning isn't that I think he played the best. It's he showed so much development through the year that he just stands out to me, because he went from when he first was getting in games. I mean, the guy looked like me trying to do algebra with taking angles. Or not algebra. Yeah, algebra. Like it was horrible. The guy was all over the place. It looked like his field awareness was really low. And each game he got better and better and better and better.
Right on.
It's funny you said that. That's kind of where my head went. But I am going to stick with Oweh because he led all rookies in pressures. His win rate was low because it was like Oweh wouldn't win often, but when he won, it was a pressure. And so that shows me how much potential this cat has. If he can become consistent in his rep-to-rep pass rush wins, he's going to be a monster. Like, there's no way around it. So I am going to roll with Oweh because I think – but I'll say Stevens too because, like I said, he got better every game as the year went on.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I was. I saw the most growth out of Stevens, if you will. Yeah. And I think that's what it was for me. It was your starting point, your ending point. Because it's easy to always pick the highest pick because they're likely the most talented coming out, which would be Bateman at this point, and we've seen it from Bateman. But for me, it was the guy who was a running back turned defensive back, thrown into the Ravens, went from corner to safety, and then he just steadily was forced into pushed into a larger role and was able to, with every step of his progression, take on the role and handle his business. He had a great read today. And yes, he dropped the interception. It's a wet ball. I'm not even hurting. I'm not mad at him for it. But he had a great read. Saw it coming the entire way. Past, I think it was a Freer move. And he read it perfectly, jumped in front of it, and ball hit him right in the numbers. But That's the stuff that he was not going to be doing the first half of this season. So that's what I really appreciated from him. But I'll finish this point too here. Between the three we just mentioned, there's substantial upside for all three of them. So that's optimistic for this draft class. And whether you hated the Sean Wade pick or the Ben Mason pick, or you don't think Ben Cleveland's gonna make it as a starter here, whatever it may be on the later picks, the earlier picks the Ravens did very well on, and I have some high hopes for them, especially, like I said, Brandon Stevens.
Yeah, well said, and a good outro, because I still think there's a lot of things this team needs to figure out, but they have, they have some key pieces in place. They have a lot of draft picks coming up. We're gonna have a lot of fun in draft season. They're gonna get there. They're gonna figure it out. They're gonna field a competitive team. The health thing this year was just can't do anything about it. You just got to roll.
It was Murphy's Law. It was Murphy's Law.
Law.
What can go wrong will go wrong, and that's literally how the season went in terms of health.
It
was like the preseason, every day you'd blink and there'd be another guy on the IR. And then as the season went on, you'd start to ramp up this team. They'd drop off because you'd lose guys. And by the end of the season, you're playing guys who weren't on NFL rosters at many starting positions. And what are you going to do, right? What are you going to do? Yeah, the fact that they were, 5 games that came down to a final possession, and they either couldn't pull it off or lost it in the final possession, with the amount of back 25 on the IR, and you're still able to get that close. When you put those pieces back into this offense and defense next year healthy, when you add the draft capital, and we'll be talking about that all offseason, and then you look into free agency, and right now they got about 23 to spend. You take some off for class and everything, but they'll make some moves, obviously, and try to gain that back. There's a lot of ways they can supplement this team. But, kind of going back to one of your points you made earlier, they have to nail down this offensive philosophy. And I think that's going to be the jumping off point before we see any coaches fired, before we see any decisions made about the future of what they're going to do this offseason. That will be the starting point for how they handle their business.
Well said. Couldn't agree more. And that's all we have for you guys today. I want to take a second, if you guys are still hanging around, that we've gone way over what we normally did this year for video length. But, first year doing this, Adam and I have been talking about doing a video series like this for a long time, and just can't thank you guys enough for sticking around with us and spending every Sunday after the game with us. We appreciate it. So thank you to you guys, the viewers. You guys make this a lot of fun, a lot of interacting with you guys in the comments and on Twitter. So much respect to you guys, and this will be the last sign off of 2021. So be good to each other, be good to yourselves. Peace out.